We have a show, Quicksilver, out of Sweden. It did super well in Sweden. Of course, you expect that or hope for that. But it did 15 times more viewing in the rest of the world cumulatively than it did Sweden. So we've got this huge opportunity there. And then interestingly, and it's huge in Argentina. So you get these, if you produce a wide variety, you get lots of different sharing around the world.
Netflix is the most subscribed entertainment streaming service in the world, with over 220 million global subscribers. And founder Reed Hastings seems to believe there's quite a way for the stock to go, given he recently bought over 51,000 shares on the open market. Management expects the service to add just 2.5 million subscribers in the first quarter of 2022, and considering the North American segment has pretty much stopped adding new subscribers in the past few quarters, investors are rightly concerned about where the future of the business is going. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down whether Netflix can reach 500 million global subscribers. Why 500 million? Well, that's the number that Chief Financial Officer Spencer Newman pointed to as Netflix's long-term goal when he spoke at Morgan Stanley's event last week. Full disclosure, Netflix is about 6% of my investment portfolio, making it my third largest individual position. So I am biased, keep that in mind, but I am going to be backing up everything that I talk about in today's video with data and what I think is a reasonable way to view Netflix and the broader streaming business. Also, if you want to track your portfolio like I just showed you for the diversification of my portfolio, as well as use it at tax time and track the performance of your individual positions and into ETFs and that sort of thing over time, then make sure you consider checking out SHARESIGHT. I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. If you use my link, you'll get 4 months free when you sign up, so go check it out. Before we get into understanding what the market looks like for Netflix and how many subscribers they could potentially capture in certain markets, I think it's a good idea to let's first take a look at what Netflix's business would look like if they did achieve 500 million subscribers in, say, 10 to 15 years. Those subscribers would probably be broken down into about 80 to 100 million in the US market or in the North American market, and then about 400 to 420 million subscribers outside of North America. This breakdown will make more sense when I talk about some of the data we have on these markets in a little bit on the US market and outside of the US. But if we just took the 500 million subscribers and we applied the current monthly fee or subscription fee that you have to pay to be subscribed on average to a Netflix subscription, which is $11.60, that would be revenue of just under $70 billion in 10 years if they were able to achieve 500 million subscribers. And that $70 billion figure would probably be on the low end, considering that Netflix also has a track record of consistently increasing their prices over time. So if we imagine that the average price for a subscription went from the current $11.60 to about $15 US per month, then you're talking about $90 billion in revenue. Then we could think about applying today's operating margin, which is about 22%. That would mean we're looking at about $20 billion of profit. But again, the operating margin pretty much has consistently gone up at about 3% per year. So if you combine a few of these factors, 500 million subscribers, improving profit margins, increasing their prices a little bit, you can quickly get to $40–50 billion in profit in 10 or 15 years time, which is significantly higher than the current, I think, 5 or 6 billion that they're producing. So clearly, if Netflix can nail a couple of these key things, improving profit margins, hitting 500 million subscribers and increasing their prices slightly over time, there is a significant opportunity for the business to be massive, many times bigger than it is today. So that is why it's worth spending time, if you're interested in looking at Netflix as an investment, figuring out whether it is reasonable to project that the business could hit 500 million subscribers. And that's what I want to do in today's video. So let's start by talking about North America, which is the most penetrated market that Netflix has, and it generates the most revenue out of all of the other regions. The first question is, have they reached a peak in the US market? Well, if we look at the data, the US has about 120 million households that have access to the internet. And if you were including Canada in North America, then you could maybe add another 10 million on top of that. So with the 75 million subscribers that Netflix has in North America, they currently have market penetration of about 58%. So they are in about 58% of households in North America that have access to the internet, which is pretty significant. Growth in the number of subscribers in North America has slowed to about 5 to 6% per year over the past few years. And in 2021, just 1.3 million new subscribers were added in North America. So is this a sign that the North American business has reached a peak, that they're grinding to a halt and they're not going to grow anymore, as many people are suggesting? I actually don't think so, and here's why. We need to remember that 2021, which is the latest financial year, came directly after 2020. Surprise, surprise. But 2020 was a year that was filled with stay-at-home orders and different kinds of restrictions and people just being sick in general, which meant they were spending more time at home. And the result of all of these things was we saw in 2020 Netflix subscriber growth increase massively. And Netflix at the time said that what we are seeing is a pull forward of subscribers, of people subscribing that would have likely done so anyway at some point in the future, let's say in 2021. So what that means is when we're looking at the numbers for Netflix over the past year, we can't look at 2020 or 2021 in isolation. We should combine them and take an average. And imagine we're combining those 2 years, 2020 being abnormally high and 2021 being abnormally low. And if we average the subscriber additions in North America from 2021 and 2020, then it was 3.8 million per year, which is actually significantly higher than 2019 before the pandemic, which was 2.9 million. And during the past 3 years, the price of the subscription has increased by $2 per month, which might not sound like a lot, but just applying that $2 per month increase to their US subscriber base adds $1.8 billion of recurring revenue, which is basically cash flow because it doesn't cost them anything to increase the price. $1.8 billion in cash flow that is recurring every year going forward. For a really long time, the management team at Netflix has basically said that they believe the US market opportunity for Netflix is about 60 to 90 million subscribers. And they have said this before they were in that range. Right now, as I've mentioned, they're at 75 million, so they're basically right in the middle. So there's potentially some room for them to increase their subscriber base in the US and across North America more broadly, but the opportunity is going to be limited in that region. And management certainly recognizes this, which is why they've really ramped up the price increases in that region over the past few years. The amazing thing is that they've had pretty much no pushback. As much as people like to grovel about price increases when they happen, the data just doesn't show that people are actually unsubscribing when these price increases take place. And that's a testament to how valuable Netflix is compared to how much it costs. But all of this around the North American market is basically to say that Netflix is probably going to need, at the very least, 400 million subscribers outside of North America to get close to having 500 million subscribers globally. So how big is this global opportunity? Well, we can start by thinking about how many people there are on the planet. So there's currently 7.9 billion people around the world, but that's too broad, right? Because people who don't have access to the internet, for example, of course, will not be subscribing to a Netflix subscription, and that's actually a significant amount of people. So if we just focus on the number of people worldwide who have access to the internet, then we're coming down to something around 4.95 billion people. But then Netflix also doesn't operate in every single country. They operate in 180 countries, which is a lot, but there's a couple of places where they don't operate. They don't operate in North Korea, they don't operate in Crimea, they don't operate in Syria. But these places aren't, and they also don't operate in Russia, but these places aren't massive populations. They're not a huge loss to Netflix's business when we're looking at it in a global scale. But there is one other place that they don't operate, which is significant, which is China. Unfortunately, Netflix is banned in China along with any other service that's outside of China that offers information or entertainment, because the Chinese Communist Party has a strong grasp on what information and access to entertainment and things outside of China that citizens have access to. And that means that Netflix is not able to operate there entirely. So that's significant. There's about 1 billion people in China that currently have access to the internet. So you have to knock 1 billion off that number, and we're down to about 4 billion people in the world who have access to the internet, in which Netflix operates in those countries. But it's still inaccurate to use individual people who have access to the internet as the market for Netflix, because people who live in the same household will not be both buying a Netflix subscription. Households buy one Netflix subscription usually, and even between households, a lot of the time people share them. If someone lives alone and someone else lives with roommates, or even they live alone, they might share a subscription. So a much more accurate way to look at the market opportunity, especially internationally, is to look at the number of households who have access to the internet globally. And that figure is about 1 billion households according to Netflix's management. We could even go a little bit more narrow video and talk about the number of households who have subscribed to cable or pay TV in the past, essentially how many people or households have shown the willingness to pay for entertainment content. That number is about 700 million, but I think that number is probably on the conservative side. I think that considering Netflix is significantly cheaper, it's easier to access, the quality is better, there's more things available, not just on Netflix, but on other streaming services as well. It's very likely that a significant amount of people who never had cable or pay TV will be willing to subscribe to either Netflix or Disney Plus or some of these other services. So Netflix's market is massive, about 1 billion households globally that they can potentially get into, and that figure is very, very likely going to increase substantially over time. Not necessarily through population growth, although that's likely to continue for some time, but more from households getting access to the internet that don't have access to the internet. India, for example, just 10 years ago, they only had 10% penetration of households with access to the internet, which meant they had about, 125 million people in their country who had access to the internet. Today, that penetration is 50%, which means there's about 700 million people. So from 125 to 700 million over the course of a decade, and they're only at 50% penetration. The US is at 90, and of course, India is going to take a long time to get anywhere near 90% internet. But over the very, very long run, there's hundreds of millions more of people and then still hundreds of millions of more households just in India that will be gaining access to the internet and will become potential customers for Netflix. But there is a caveat to all of this. There's a big kind of asterisk that's attached to these international subscribers, and that's that they generate significantly less revenue in most cases than North American subscribers can. And if we take India as the most extreme example, which I think it is, in India you can get cable TV for about $3 per month. And that's significantly less than the 60, 70 US dollars per month that you pay in the United States and in some other areas as well. So Netflix has had to lower the price of their subscription significantly to compete with cable TV. So Netflix's subscription in India ranges from $2.65 up until $8.65, so significantly lower than the American offer. And what that means is while that is the price difference between the two subscriptions, Netflix needs to get about 3 to 4 times as many subscribers in India to make up for it to be equally as valuable on a revenue basis as one new subscriber in the US. So it's not as simple as just taking 500 million subscribers and then applying a certain monthly rate. You need to think about it from different regions. Which regions are they more likely to get a lot of penetration because they're spending a lot of money on content in those regions? There will be other regions where they won't spend as much money, at least over the next 5-10 years, in producing content, so they're less likely to be more penetrated in those markets. And then each region will have a different price point that is reasonable based on the standard of living and the competitive pricing of things like cable TV. So there's a lot of other factors that go into thinking about how many subscribers the company may have, and also what's more important, or as equally as important, is figuring out what is reasonable for how much customers will be paying for that subscription. But all in all, if we take an approximate assumption about households today and the potential of more households having access to the internet over the next decade, then Netflix still will probably need about 40 to 45% global market share in order to hit 500 million subscribers, which is less penetration that they have now in the United States, but it is still very, very significant. And it doesn't just end there on the revenue side. We need to also think about how much will they be spending on content to maintain that level of audience. That's another massive question mark about Netflix's business is, will they be able to spend less per new subscriber over time, or will they have to spend more? Will they actually have to spend more money in order to attract these new customers in these new regions? If they make content in India, for example, and attract Indian customers, will that content be watched and loved by people in other regions, or will it only work to serve Indian subscribers? There's a lot of question marks that go well beneath the idea of can they hit 500 million subscribers? But hopefully in today's video, you got some value out of seeing some of the early research that I've been doing on Netflix, some of the things I'm thinking about and how you can apply these things, not only to Netflix and other streaming services, but how you can apply this same kind of logic when researching and analyzing other companies. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as I said at the beginning, if you can, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. And it actually helps push the video as well. If you watch the video and you're not subscribed and you hit that subscribe button, it tells YouTube that you loved the content and it helps me grow my channel even more. So I very much appreciate it if you can do that. And if you're already subscribed, you know I love you. So I hope everyone has a great day and a great rest of the week, and I'll see you guys in the next video.